Hello everyone, I'm Taaka Awori, founder and CEO of Busara Africa, a Pan-African leadership development firm. Welcome to the Leadership in Africa Redefined podcast. This podcast seeks to do two things. One, change the narrative of leadership in Africa, and two, provide concrete strategies and tips for leading in an African context. We do this by interviewing amazing African leaders so that the narrative of leadership in Africa is defined by the best of us, not the worst of us. We share their stories and provide practical suggestions for dealing with the challenges of leading on this continent. We discuss, interrogate, and examine concrete leadership practices that work. We also look at failures that these leaders faced and how they navigated their ways back on track. It's an exciting and empowering space for leaders to thrive and engage. Subscribe to the show to become the leader you have always wanted to be. And if you like the show, be sure you rate it and review it. It helps others to find it. Thanks so much. Welcome to another episode of Leadership in Africa Redefined, the podcast. Another one of our nuts and bolts sessions. And I'm here today with Robert. Robert, hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Looking forward to this conversation.
I can't wait.
So folks, the conversation today emanated from the fact that Robert and I, as we've been working with many different leaders, have been seeing people who are really trying to bring about significant, valuable transformation to their organizations or their teams, but they're getting frustrated. What they're finding is resistance. And they're feeling demoralized. They're feeling like, is this really worth it? And we see this as a pattern. Yeah. So our episode today is around managing resistance to change. It's a reality. We know you have to deal with it. What are the strategies to manage this difficulty? But in case you're trying to lead change and you're wondering, am I seeing resistance? Let's start out with the symptoms. How would you know if you're trying to drive a change process? How do you know if what you're seeing is resistance to change? And probably the symptoms might be at two levels. They might be at an individual level, or you might start to see it at a team or organizational level. So maybe I'll start out by sharing what I have seen and what many of some of my coaching clients have shown me at an individual level to know that this thing here is resistance to change. The first one, which is very common on this continent, and he's laughing because he knows what I'm going to say.
And it is higher in Ghana.
Yes, not just in Ghana, in Uganda where I'm from. You also see. So those of you from different parts of the continent, you will tell us if you see this a lot. But let's tell you what it is. Passive-aggressive behavior. Okay, so what do we mean by that? What we mean is where you're trying to bring about a change, and everybody's like, hey, yes, oh, yes, Taaka, hey, yes, boss, yes. And in the end, they're all like, they're busy thinking, are you kidding? This thing will never work. But they will never tell you directly. So what people do is they will smile and they will say yes, and instead they will have other ways of showing that they're not for it. You will keep asking, are we all for the change? Folks, is this something we want to do? And people will say, oh yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, let's go with it. But then you will start to see it. You will see a noticeable drop in enthusiasm and commitment. So that's how they'll be aggressive in their actions. But in terms of how they will smile at you, that's why we call that passive-aggressive behavior. Another thing you will see to know that you're dealing with resistance to change is you may see lower productivity and quality of work. So all of a sudden you're trying to bring around a transformation, maybe in the culture or something, and then you notice people are not delivering things on time, quality goes down. Probably what you might be seeing is the resistance to the change you've introduced. What have you seen, Robert?
I have seen negative attitudes. I mean, if we are bringing a change, so for instance, if we say now attendance is going to be at this time, and you see people intentionally behaving in negative ways to show that change you're bringing, they don't support it. So they will either not come, they will not obey, so they will not go according to what you're saying, or they will start forming cliques, basically aimed at hijacking the thing that you said, So people behaving in negative ways to show you that they don't approve. And I've also seen resistance to new processes.
Yes, yes.
So, for instance, you bring in change and it has certain processes people have to go through. Maybe they will agree with the bigger change, but going through the processes to get the change happen,
I've seen this with technology.
Yeah,
You're trying to streamline the process. You bring in a new technology, or like, people, let's make sure we all record our things on this particular app, or we capture it on this app. And they're like, now you want to micromanage me. So they just won't use it, right?
Exactly. And also there's reduced participation. People don't just participate; they are not present. They are not part of the process. You see, they are lackadaisical. They don't come to be part of anything, and they just would not do anything at the individual level, as Taaka mentioned. Yes.
And this can be tough. So if you're starting to see those symptoms, and this the one I really want to hone into is that aspect of when you ask people, they're like, "Oh, it's okay."
Yeah.
But you can tell it's not okay. They are not happy with it. That's that passive aggressive, not being open about. And we'll come later to what can you do about it. Huh? So that's what you may see at an individual level. Huh? But the symptoms of resistance to change don't just show up at an individual level.
No.
You may start to see it within the team or the whole organization. Huh? I know some of the things folks have talked about at the organization or team level when there's resistance is you start to see more conflict and tension. Huh? So there's almost like one person says A, another says B. You know how you talked about cliques.
Yes.
Huh? Sometimes you may have a clique that is for the change that seems more progressive, and another that is more like, we have been here. What is it? MBAs, we've been here, we've done it all before. Huh? So those ones, then you start to see conflict between those two groups within the organization. Huh? Another thing I've seen, particularly if the change is captured in a new strategy, for instance. You may have a new strategy that clearly lays out this is the direction we're going, and you expect that different teams would align with this strategic direction. Then all of a sudden you ask each team, so what's your strategy for the year? And then all of a sudden you have directed you're going to Kumasi, or you're going to Mombasa, or you're going to Durban, and you can see they're going to Lagos, they're going to Abuja. There's a complete misalignment in direction. So that's also a signal of this is a resistance to change that's happening at a team level. What have you seen happening at a team level?
You also see communication breakdown. And people not talking to each other, or not communicating the things that they feel, how they feel, how they think things should go. People just will not communicate. Just communication breakdown is a big thing. And I've also seen prolonged decision making. So for instance, if you are the head of the organization and there are other colleagues who are in the management team with you and they don't support your idea, when they have to make a decision about something, they intentionally prolong. So they have to make, maybe the finance person has to make the money available to fund the change process, and they will make sure they want to go through the nitty-gritties. Have you gone to the procurement? Maybe that's not how they are. Maybe they are happy to support in the procurement process, but because they don't agree with the change, they will intentionally delay in the process to frustrate the process. And that's what I've seen. Are there more that you
yes. The other one I've seen is sometimes it's resistance from key influencers. You know how within our teams or organizations, you may have one or two people that this one, when they talk, everybody listens. And sometimes people will be quiet to see what does that so-and-so, what does Robert think, or what does Magdalena think, because they're a key influencer. And then when Magdalena or Robert is, and all of a sudden nobody is following behind. So I've seen that. But I've also seen, again, if your change is reflected in a strategy, or if your change has a clear project objective, implementation then becomes a disaster. Very ineffective implementation. It was clear that's the new destination we want to go to. But somehow, I remember during the times at ActionAid years ago, and we were shifting from a service delivery where we built the schools, we built the dams, we provided direct services to communities, to a rights-based approach, where now we were saying, no, actually, it's not our responsibility as the NGO, it's actually government. And I could see a lot of people were resistant to this idea because they were wondering, what does this mean for us? We know how to build schools. We know how to provide direct services. We don't know how to influence government. So one of the key indications was, of course, there was a passive aggressive. Everybody was like, yes, RBA, rights-based approach. But secretly they were like, this thing, forget it. But in terms of within the team, implementation of the rights-based approach, I noticed took a little bit longer. We were struggling with it. But at that time, I didn't maybe realize that maybe what I was looking at was some level of resistance to change. So ineffective implementation then can be also a symptom at an organizational or team level of a symptom of resistance.
Resistance change,
All right, so folks, you know what it looks like. Maybe this is what you're facing, in terms of either you're looking at an individual symptoms or organizational symptoms. Before we get into solving it and trying to figure out, how do we deal with it? I think what helps is to understand, why is it there? Why does resistance to change actually occur? And so, Robert, I'll start with you. What is your sense of why do people resist change? Are they just being difficult, or what is it?
I think one of the key things is around fear of the unknown. People don't know what's going to happen. You've got this change, maybe they were part of it or they weren't part of it, but you don't know what is going to happen. Like you just mentioned with the borehole thing, for instance, we start saying right-based approach. Okay, me, I'm an engineer, and I'm the one supposed to be building the schools. I'm supposed to be doing that. Now you say there's RPA, you haven't even communicated to me.
What is this rights-based approach? What is this advocacy? I don't know, I'm an engineer.
And then also, what does it mean for me? Does it mean I'm going to lose my job? So that's one of the things I've seen. And because most of the times there's not lack of clear communication, around the change, sometimes it also becomes a very big problem around how people just get the fear that, will it affect me? How will it going to affect me?
Yes.
And what I've also seen is also people being afraid of losing control.
Yes.
Because then the idea around, okay, if this change is happening, maybe I have a turf that I control. Or maybe some people, they have this way of, example, in our field, like in some of the fields that we work in, where people go for these events and programs and they make some sort of income out of these things. And say, oh no, now we are going to change the way we do this, attending programs. And they're like, am I going to lose something?
Yes.
Am I going to, something that maybe I use this as a trip for my holidays. When I'm going to travel for work, I use this as also my extra trip for holidays. Now you're saying travel is going to be based on some sort of thing. Is going to change. They're like, no, we are not going to make it happen. No, so those are the things I've seen that are
that
also
loss of control. So it's partly the reduced autonomy.
Exactly.
Like in fact, even if I go back to that rights-based approach thing in ActionAid, and the example you gave of the engineer, it's true. Because for the engineer, he's like, if I'm going to build a school, in fairness, he understands that this is within my control. I know exactly where this is going to go, this is where this, all of this, that's within my control. Now, if you say I have to influence the district assembly or the Ministry of Education to build schools, I don't know, but also on top of that, they may feel like I may not have the skills. I have the skills to actually build a school, build a dam. I may not have the skills to do influencing. Which I think then is tied to something else that people, they fear there's a threat to their status or identity.
Yes, true.
Many times we come across, we're trying to bring about changes where people have been doing things in a particular way and they're like, I know how to do this. Now if we change it and I don't have the skill, as you rightly said, I may not have a job. And closely tied to this, I've seen disruption of routine. It's like, but this is the way I've always done this. But I've seen this a lot when people are bringing in technology. They're like, but we've always done it this manual way.
And it has worked.
And it has worked. That's the thing. It has always worked. Why do you want to bring about this particular change? And it may actually, as we're getting used to the new technology, it may disrupt our productivity and efficiency. So why should we even bring in this new thing? This thing, we have been here, so let's continue with
Let's do it as it is.
What else are you seeing?
Lack of trust is a key thing where people don't see, they just don't trust the process. They don't trust the change that is coming. And they wonder what is going to happen. And whether it's going to be in their favor or not.
But it's also trusting whether, for instance, I've seen instances where, again, in the development sector, we work a lot, where we've said, let's try this new approach, new strategy, new approach to better impact the communities we care about. And people are like, I'm not so sure that
will work.
I'm not so sure.
Exactly.
You know, so there's a lack of trust about, and we tried that before and it didn't work.
Exactly.
As we have done, you know, that cynicism. I've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. We tried this before, it won't work. Huh? So that lack of trust.
Yeah. And then also perceived ineffectiveness of change.
Yeah. Hi, folks. Hope you're enjoying the show. So have you heard about the Africa Leaders Circle? Our impactful e-learning platform that enables you to grow into the leader you would want to follow? Here is a message to tell you what you need to know.
Are you a CEO, executive director, or HR manager that is looking to build a pipeline of leaders that are ready to step up into management roles? Are you looking for a self-paced learning platform that provides your leaders with quality content and does not take them away from their work for too long? Are you looking for a program that enables your managers to move from knowledge acquisition to demonstrable improved practice? Then look no further. Sign them up for the African Leaders Circle today. The African Leaders Circle is an e-learning platform that gives your managers access to an exclusive community of leaders across the continent and a wide range of strategies and tools to stand out. We do this through online courses, discussion forums, a library of resources, and a personal learning advisor to support each of your managers to maximize their learning on the platform. To learn more, visit our website www.busara-africa.com.
Don't forget to visit our website busara-africa.com to learn more. And now back to the show. Lots of other things, inadequate support and training. Again, we've seen this a lot of times.
Yeah.
We bring about change, but we don't train people. We don't. Remember, we mentioned one of the challenges is people may say, look, I don't have the skills.
Yeah.
Huh? I'm not sure I have the capacity. And we all of a sudden, we switch things and we don't give them the training to do it. So all of a sudden they're like, eesh, I don't understand. How will I do this? So that's another inadequate support and training. It could be sometimes it's culture. Changing organizational culture may totally shift things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not just about organizational culture. I've seen instances where the change that the organization was trying to bring about really jarred with the social cultural context. For instance, let me roll back the years when gender started to be a big issue. Now many organizations are much better about gender integration and mainstreaming. But I remember during those days, as organizations would talk about integrating gender both internally and in their programs, there would be many who would start to say, but really, is this an alignment with my own personal and societal values? Should women have such say? Should women do? So sometimes as you bring about that change, there might be a jarring with people's own individual values that are influenced by broader societal values. So those cultural changes could also be some of the reasons.
And then also I think one other thing is perceived loss of benefit.
Oh yes, that example you gave of where people are enjoying from one thing, you take it away and they're like, hey.
They're like, how am I going to continue doing this? And an uncertainty of if this change, what will happen? Will I lose? You know, that also influences, and also change to fatigue.
Change fatigue. And I want to really speak to this one. I'm glad you've raised this. I noticed, and I don't know if you saw the same, but particularly from the times of COVID, where so many organizations were pivoting, changing, really trying to say, in this new world, this new normal, what does our organizational position and market position look like? And had to pivot. Some organizations never stop changing. 1 minute they're doing this, next minute we know the 1 minute they're doing this, another minute they're doing this.
Model.
It's constant change, and sometimes people are tired. It's total change fatigue. They're like, not yet another one. It's done. I'm finished. No more changes. So change fatigue can also be part of the reason of. And I've worked with organizations who definitely employees. It's not that they're trying to be mean. They're not being difficult. They're just so tired of all these constant changes. What's the last reason you would say?
Lack of inclusion, which is a big thing. I think if any change is going to be fought and it's going to be difficult, it's going to be this idea of people are not included. People don't feel that they were included in making the decision for the change. Like you said, maybe they didn't even weren't trained for the change. So they are not even, they don't even know what's going to happen. So then that also is a key symptom that we see.
Okay. So folks, you've heard us. We've given a long list of all the reasons. So and I think we'll bring out this list to say that many times people are resisting change, not because they just want to be difficult, not because they're bad people, not because they're not committed to the mission of your organization, but many times the fears, the things we talked about, the wondering, do I have the right capacity, the sense of what is the loss, all of that contributes to it. So all of this starts to allude to what, as we said, this is a session, nuts and bolts. So what can you do? Not about whining about what goes wrong, but what can you do to really make sure that as you find resistance to change, you don't start to panic and start to blame and point fingers at those people that decide they're bad people. And I would say just, it was interesting in one of our previous nuts and bolts where Gillian started and she said, these are 2 words to remember. And what was it? It was around permission. Give permission.
Exactly.
This one, I would start also with that key thing about resistance is not a bad thing. If you start to see resistance not as a bad thing, but something that's giving you information about what you can do better as a change maker, you move from fighting mode to saying, all right, what is this resistance teaching me about what I can do better to lead and influence change? So when you come in with that mindset, then you are better able to manage the resistance.
Exactly.
So maybe I'll start with 2 strategies and we'll hear what you would have. And you will see the linkage between the strategies to things we talked about before. The first one is to have courageous conversations about change. What I find very often is that when we're leading change, we ourselves are unsure about whether it will work. We ourselves know that the reality might be some people may no longer be a fit for the organizations. We start to dodge and kind of bob and weave without being truly truthful with folks that say, look, we've scanned, we think this is our best bet in terms of having the impact and realizing our mission as an organization. It might mean that we're 60 of us in the organization. The reality might be at the end of the day, we might be 40. If it means 20 of you may no longer be with us, we will make sure we have a process, a fair process that enables you to exit in a way that is respectful and fair. But we dodge all of that. So that's where the room. So it's a lot of courageous conversations about what the change is, and the implications of the change. When there is an absence of information, that's where all the rumor mongering happens. And I've always said in previous videos, I've said that during a change process, there's no such thing as under communicating. You're constantly communicating, but what I'm beginning to learn is not any type of communication. It's usually the difficult communication. It's that's why I say it takes courage, because you'll be doing it and your heart will be beating, because you know people will be annoyed, they'll be upset, they'll be giving you attitude, but rather than dodging it and staying in your office, it's about engaging people. So that's the first one I would say, courageous communication. The second is something you alluded to as being one of the problems, is that people resist things that they are not involved in and engaged in. So your second strategy is that the more resistance you see, bring people closer. Involve them a lot more. The earlier you bring them, because some of managing resistance is preventative. If you wait till resistance is so big until the end, then it becomes hard to manage. But if you do certain things early enough, you reduce the likelihood of the resistance being huge. And one of those things is involving employees in thinking through the change, in thinking through how the change will be implemented, in participatory decision making. So that would be my big second. I'd say involve employees. What would be some of yours?
I would say provide training and support. You know, if you know there are spaces, there are things that are going to happen that's going to cause people to not feel comfortable or not to know how to manage it, please provide training and support. For instance, if you're bringing a new technology?
Yeah.
Have you put in place a clear and you have communicated it? That
Yes.
Don't be afraid. We are bringing a new technology. By the end of the day, we are going to help you do it. And also provide the support. If people are not comfortable, is there a space where they can feel safe to go and say, look, I need help?
Yes.
You are going to say now, maybe you are telling your drivers now, you have to log into a system before you pick a car. Maybe initially they used to write. The person has never touched a computer before.
Yes.
So how are they going to do that? So you need to say, look, don't be afraid. If you need support, we put support in this space, you can go for it. Another thing which is so very important, I think it goes back to what you talk about, information.
Yes.
Is feedback, taking feedback and also addressing concerns.
Yeah.
So create a space where people can come in and ask, I'm worried about this,
Yes.
you know, that's so that people can share their real concerns with you, and also they can give you feedback and say, look, we love this technology, but we think, you know, this place there's a problem, or we don't think this, and take it in a good way, and that will help in the process of
it's so interesting. This is tied to the other nuts and bolts we did around what the nuts and bolts where we talked about feedback.
Exactly.
Because it's the same way when people are sharing feedback with you about why they think what you're proposing, your proposed change won't work, that's the time not to be defensive.
Exactly.
It's our natural tendency, particularly if we're unsure about the change. So all of a sudden, try and defend it, then. But I think you're so spot on. It's giving people the space and time to really fully air what am I concerned about, and how can we support them in that respect. Is it also about providing some psychological support?
It is important to provide psychological support, and I mean, it's the environment we create, like I mentioned, that if you create an environment that says, oh, it is okay for us to talk. If we have a challenge, we are okay to talk to someone, and we provide a structural space. So for instance, say, talk to this person or have any or that, or give people directions so that they don't feel like, look, I'm afraid, but I can't tell anybody, or there's no space to speak, and within that space, that's when sometimes it becomes difficult.
I saw an organization who went through some significant change in the last 2 years, and I noticed the emotional, I almost call it an emotional infrastructure they put around employees. The first thing they did was they named that change and the potential change they were thinking about that could have affected people's jobs. They named that we know this is emotionally difficult for you all. 2, they got counselors in. They were external counselors, but they got counselors in. So people felt that there was somewhere they could go to speak about those issues. But I think and they created spaces where employees could speak to each other, not to kind of whine and go on, but in constructive ways. So remember, at one point we were called in to provide sessions that allowed them to really say, how can we take what we're seeing as negative change into an opportunity. And it took quite a lot. But I think that's the key thing. It's providing that psychological support for people to navigate change. Maybe I'll bring a last one in, which is around managing expectations. I think many of the leaders I've encountered who get very frustrated with, but this change is not happening and people are blocking me. I think they're not being realistic. And it's recognizing that particularly if it's transformative change, it takes time. And many of us, we're leading human beings. We're not leading widgets. We're not leading cups. These are human beings with feelings or robots with emotions. So setting realistic expectations and timelines for when you think that change will actually happen. I see often we get frustrated because we've communicated to the board or to a senior person that, the change will be done by this and this time, and then we'll be doing this, and now that puts pressure on us. So maybe as you start to do your action plan for when that change will be rolled out, to be a lot more conservative around that in terms of managing expectation and anticipate challenges. You know, so you're not seeing it as like, oh no, I can't believe this has happened, but actually saying this is normal. As long as you're trying to bring around change, it's normal for people as human beings to feel threatened, and it's normal for it to take time. All right, so these are some of the strategies. Are we able to summarize? Let's start from the back. So we saw manage expectations. Offer psychological support. What else have we said you can do? We
also mentioned
address concerns and feedback. Provide training and support. Involve employees and have courageous conversations. So folks, if you're out there, and you're leading change, just know that you are not alone. I think our takeaway, if I can leave you with a takeaway, is that again, resistance is not a bad thing. As you lead change and you meet with resistance, look at it as data, as information to say, okay, maybe there's something I need to do differently to better lead or influence this change. And hopefully one of the strategies we've shared with you today can be something that you can take away and use to better manage the resistance you're facing. So thank you,
very much,
Robert.
Taaka.
Wonderful as always. Thank you
Yes.
for joining us. As always, I end with my 3 requests. Number 1, subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you found this useful, if you yourself are going through difficult change, or you know a leader who's like, as for this change and this resistance, please share the show with them. And finally, would love to hear your feedback. Please rate, review, and let us know what is the one thing you are going to do differently to manage any resistance to change you would be facing. So thank you and see you next time. Ciao.
Bye.
Hello, wonderful leader. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the podcast. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. If you want more of the lessons, experiences, and nuggets for effective leadership, join our amazing platform for leaders, the African Leaders Circle. Learn more at www.busara-africa.com. And if you like the show, don't forget to subscribe and share with other amazing leaders. See you soon. Ciao.